So this is the Khoodeelaar television channel being broadcast on the internet under the banner of the baby angel Geronimo essay. This is Monday, the 8th of January 2024, continuing on the scandal of the post office, extrapolating the basic elements of the evidence and applying the extrapolation on the case of Croydon Borough Council. For 6-7 years, Croydon Borough Council, which was controlled by the Labour Party, was captured by a gang of criminals consisting of the chief executive, Negroni, and the entire senior leadership of the council. And they stole and looted amounts that actually eventually ended totaling about £1 billion. The same can be extrapolated to different degrees and applied on the various other councils across England. There is no accountability. And one of the biggest corruption built into the system is that council annual accounts, finance information are not published. They're not published excessively for most of the people of the relevant boroughs and relevant communities. So the people are in the dark, left in the dark about the actual extent of the abuse of their finances by each of the councils, all these councils across England. And you can imagine the size of the corruption and criminality if you look at the embarrassing confession by the Rishi Sunak-fronted regime. Confessions about the looting and robbery and theft that is called HS2, high speed 2, the railway corruption. There is no forum outside of the formal courts that actually can or does deal with the corruption by councils, in councils, through councils. And going to a court complaining about a corporate executive authority, it is a complete nightmare. In principle, the theoretical option is available for the individual citizen to take the claims against the corrupt councils to the court. But by the time these proceedings take place, the main damage has been done and the main criminals have bolted. Against this background, looking at what is called the in the back in private lie, which contains some legal news, so-called, it is grotesquely, stupidly written, and it is absolutely the purpose in the private lie in the back is to hide, then to reveal the illegalities, the corruption and criminalities that are perpetrated through the court procedure. So having said all of that, looking at the PricewaterhouseCoopers report published in November 2014, when Eric Pickles was the Secretary of State, that is, Cabinet Minister, in the name of the communities. So Pickles received the report from the Price Waterhouse Coopers. And on the 4th of November 2014, Pickles made a statement in the House of Commons in which he personally identified Lutfur Rahman as the dishonest, unaccountable, law-breaking holder of a post who was behaving like a middle-aged monarch. And the Pickles was calling Lutfur Rahman the middle-aged, not middle-aged, middle. We'll come to that if we can find that one. Well, it's taking it too long. So we are not going to come to that information. So what actually Pickles said was that Lutfur Rahman was abusing his position in the post of mayor at the expense of Tower Hamlets, and he was abusing his position in relation to the funds that was available in the council. Now, as a result of the key findings made available to the Pickles by PricewaterhouseCoopers, who didn't actually have the time or the cooperation of the council to investigate most of the corruption that Lutfur Rahman was perpetrating. But the part that they were able to investigate was bad enough. So the Pickles announced the appointment of commissioners that he was going to send to Tower Hamlets, which commissioners would look at the financial activities and grants being made by Tower Hamlets Council. Now, the fact that grant making was highlighted, focused on 10 years ago, that was November 2014, has now come back. Grant making has come back to actually feature as the main way that Lutfur Rahman does his corruption. It appears that recently a so-called charity connected with the mosques in Tower Hamlets, chaired by Shamsul Haq, has been allowed £250,000 grants from Tower Hamlets Council. And in the coverage of this by the BBC, they say that it is said or that Luthraman is said not to have had any involvement in the grant making. That is a joke. Luthraman is the main executive council because he is the elected executive mayor. He is the main executive that makes the decisions, executive decisions, in the name of, through the Township Council. So whether or not his name appears in the actual grant documents doesn't make any difference. The entire culture, the entire atmosphere within Township Council financially is dominated by the narrative, the agenda, that everything should be done to satisfy the purpose of Luthra. Benefit, which is to benefit and aid and abet unaccountable individuals and people and organizations. So if you multiply by the number of decisions, the amount that each of the decision affects, then you are talking about hundreds of millions of pounds worth of loss to the community and the corresponding gain to elements that are aligned with Luthraman. Another thing to notice that since the move from Mulberry Place to the former site of Tower Hamlets, the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel, the logo of the Tower Hamlets Council website, the main website logo has been changed to include an image of a mosque, which is not very different from the image of the East London Mosque, which is about 400, 500, 600 yards away from the site of the now new Tower Hamlets Council headquarters in the Whitechapel Road. Now, to what extent was that the result of the democratic mandate of the community, that the Tower Hamlets Council would be shown as representing one particular faith community? Because the demographic representation of the community in Tower Hamlets, the demographic kind of facts are that the Muslims are only a third of the population in Tower Hamlets. Others are of other faiths and other religions. Now, this is something that potentially is very anti-democratic and very exclusive, meaning exclusive of other religious groups other than the Muslims. But even if the Muslim community is assumed to be represented by that image, the Muslim population ordinarily, the one-third of the population in Tower Hamlets, are not really represented by anything that is done by the gang that dominates the East London Mosque, and by extension the gang that is related to Lutfur Rahman's cabal, fronted by Lutfur Rahman as the executive mayor incumbent. So when Eric Pickle spoke on the 4th of November 2014, he spoke with a lot of ignorance about the borough and the population and the actual goings on within the council and the money that was being abused by Lutfur Rahman, or the financial resources being abused by Lutfur Rahman. For example, the Poplar Town Hall, And what happened was that within 10 days or within a week, almost a week of that speech by Eric Pickles, made on the 4th of November 2014, a meeting held in a place that used to be called the Water Lily Place Center in the Mile End Road in Whitechapel, was attended by about four 400 people. I would say 350 of whom were absolutely brainwashed. Even if those people were capable of being assembled again 10 years on now, they would have no idea what they were attending that meeting for, except that everything that went behind their appearing at that rally or that gathering was spiritually influenced. And in the spiritual influences, the main part played by a very, very, very small number of people, included Shamsul Haq. And Shamsul Haq was active member, chair, executive member of the Council of Mosques in Tower Hamlets 10 years ago. And even before that, and Shamsul Haq is a proven liar on the record. Now, Shamsul Haq gave evidence before Richard Morey, the election commissioner, during the first part of 2015 as part of the petition that had been filed by 4 Tower Hamlets Borough voters against Lutfur Rahman. And as part of the character reference that Shamsul Haq intended to give to help Lutfur Rahman against that petition, Shamsul Haq said that one of the items produced against his role was that he had actually broken the law and had asked what it was, where he could be reaching every one of those people. He said, or he had said, that it was part of the duty that every Muslim had as part of the faith to vote for Lutfur Rahman. Words to the effect, because I'm not looking at the actual text, but that is why I'm saying words to the effect. What has happened was that when he was cross-examined, and it was pointed to Shamsul Haq that evidence actually existed that he had urged people to vote electorally for Lutfur Rahman as part of their faith. Words to that effect. When it is pointed out to Shamsul Haq that visual evidence existed, audio evidence existed, that he had indeed urged Muslims among the electors in Tower Hamlets to support Lutfur Rahman as part of the religious faith of the Muslims. Shamsul Haq denied. First of all, he denied that he had done that. And when it was pointed out to him clearly that evidence did exist that he had done that, Shamsul Haq said, Words to the effect that if the evidence shows that I did do that, then I must have done that. And that is the clearest example of Shamsulok having admitted at the election court that he had lied. 10 years on, it is this, well, 9 years, I mean, that was in 2015. So 9 years later, Shamsulok is in the news again to the effect that he chairs an organization in Tower Hamlets which has been allowed £250,000 grants by Tower Hamlets Council, which is now being fronted by Luther Roman following the 2022 council election, in which he was able to contest for the first time after being banned by Richard Morey in April 2015 from seeking or holding public office for 5 years. Now, that is the extent, the details, the key points of the corruption that goes on in local councils. So, similar corruption and criminality is going on in every single other borough, other councils. In Croydon, it has been happening multiple times. In Lewisham, many times. In Hackney, many times. In Newham, it has been happening, but in Newham's case, the notoriety of the previous incumbent in the post of mayor, Robin Wales, has been significantly replaced by a different kind of personality, which means that the corruption, the lack of accountability, and lack of care perpetrated by Newham Council and its executive mayor is different. For example, we have been pointing out the grotesque phantomizing by Roxana Fiaz of her alleged sincerity as compared with Robin Wales. Within months of her taking the post for the first time, result of the 2018 mayor election, Roxana Fiaz was present at a meeting held at the Community Links building in Canning Town, which was topically at that time being attended by Philip Alston, who was on a tour of the United Kingdom as the United Nations then poverty and extreme poverty envoy. And as part of the evidence given at that rally, at that gathering, a woman of West African origin described how she was forced to spend 20 hours outside the social services of Newham Council, whose social services staff plainly, point blank, refused to help her when she said it was cold and she was very hungry. So this single mother described that she was forced, therefore, to survive. She was forced to drink the milk that was meant for her baby to drink and live on. Hearing that evidence presented at a meeting addressed by the United Nations Poverty Envoy, Roxana Fiage a sort of apology, saying words to the effect that she apologized to the mayor and on behalf of the Niyam Council that this happened to this person. And she said that she was apologizing for the fact that the behavior of the individual employees who behaved in the cruel way to the mother, single mother, happened at all. It shouldn't have happened, she said. But that's it. After saying that, Roxana Fiaz did not say that it will not happen again. Roxana Fiaz didn't say that I will make sure that there will be policy, guidance, and obligations put in place so that employees of Niyam Council Social Services never behaved like that again. But she hasn't done that. Now, this is 2024. And the incident, the actual meeting held at the community links was on the 12th of November 2018, 6 years ago. And in the meantime, Ruxana Fiaz has managed to get elected again for a second four-year term in 2022 in the post of elected executive mayor. The scandal about the bus freedom pass, the scandal about the freedom pass being denied, blocked, and kind of withheld from hundreds of senior citizens, elderly people eligible to freedom pass and absolutely dependent on the freedom pass, shows that Roxana Fiaz fronts a Niyam Council which is corrupt, which is dishonest, and above all, which is cruel and which is lacking in compassion. That is just the tip of the iceberg. There is nothing in the Niyam Council that actually operates as a forum or mechanism whereby people who are misled, mistreated, and denied their basic rights are given any reprieve, any justice, any relief. For example, there is a thing called the internal complaints outfit within Niyam Council. Hundreds of complaints submitted by people with real serious hardship caused by Niyam Council's corruption, lying, incompetence, dishonesty. These complaints are ignored in effect. And there is no central United Kingdom based forum. For example, the so-called local government ombudsman is a joke. Local government ombudsman, for a start, like the police, the Metropolitan Police and other police forces, are abolishing, scrapping, doing away with the idea of relief, complaints, accountability. If we move to town hamlets again, in the years that Tony Blair was centrally in number 10 Downing Street as the regime of Blair as the Prime Minister and Gordon Brown as the Chancellor of the Exchequer Finance Minister, Tony Blair shifted, gave away thousands of council housing stock some years later amount of housing stock, Tar Hamlets Council housing stock being given to a smaller gang of crooks called the THCH. In June 2013, when I what kind of use and how people were being treated by the gangs that had been given the housing stock. When I attempted that question, the so-called cabinet member for housing was a councillor called Rabina Khan. But Rabina Khan was spared. Rabina Khan was spared the task of answering my question by the Labour Party speaker of the meeting, who lied and suspended that part of the meeting by citing a completely dishonest pretext that somebody was recording the meeting. That somebody was a man called John White, who was perfectly entitled to record the meeting, but the fact is that the meeting was suspended. And the vital time that one of the reasons standpoint of the crooks in the council was that Mike Tyrrell, the crook who was in post as the chief executive of Tar Hamlets Community Housing, was part of the Labour Party gang in Tar Hamlets that didn't want the attention to be focused on the criminal activities by Tar Hamlets Community Housing. And Mike Tyrrell, the criminal. That was in June 2013. Now, this is calendar year 2024, that is more than 10 years later. The evidence is that Tar Hamlets Community Housing has completely collapsed. It never worked properly, but it has completely collapsed to the point that it has now been effectively taken over by the gang of crooks called Poplar Harka. Now, in between, there is no forum that actually people can go to seeking any real redress. And the department that was fronted by Eric Pickles in 2014 is now occupied by Michael Gove, who is not delivering any accountability whatsoever. So you go back to the post office scandal and the corruption and criminality by the post office bureaucracy, and you extrapolate that to the behavior of councils, which are allowing gangs and gangs and gangs of crooks and criminals to effectively control local councils. And that criminality was imposed on the local councils by Tony Belair. And the main thug that Tony Belair used in looting Tar Hamlets Council's housing stock was John Prescott. And Prescott occupied the criminal organization DEFRA. We go back to DEFRA, and it is DEFRA that has been actively perpetrating crimes all these years without any stop or a break. And it is DEFRA that mounted the attack on baby angel Geronimo in 2000. is corrupt, criminal, openly criminal. Any textbook definition of these of crime, but there is no So we shall be ending this particular part at this point, and we shall continue in the following editions in due course, of course. And this is why the Baby Angel Geronimo, the Baby Angel Geronimo editions, the Baby Angel Geronimo essays are morally and ethically the leading framework under which all the criminality can be seen. Criminality whereby the judicial system is colluding with the crooks and criminals. As the judges in the High Court acted as rubber stamps against Baby Angel Geronimo and openly declared, as Griffiths did, the High Court judge so called, that evidence doesn't matter, that the Secretary of State could disregard evidence and convict the Baby Angel Geronimo of an infection that the Baby Angel Geronimo never had, never could have. So crime dominates the culture of the government. Crime dominates the culture of the government departments. Crime dominates the culture of the British Parliament. Crime dominates the culture of the British judiciary. We shall be continuing